Okay, so our next talk is from Bradney Smith at Spotted Zebra.
I'm going to apologise up front for the lack of Pokémon pictures in my slides. Hopefully they're still somewhat engaging. Which keyboard are we on? There we go. Hi everyone, I'm Brad Smith. I'm the AI lead at Spotted Zebra. And like many of you in this room, we've fine-tuned large language models, we've made retrieval augmented generation systems, and we've played around making a few agents as well. But actually what we found is the biggest impact that we've had with clients is when we nailed the fundamentals of evaluation. So what I'm going to show you this evening is 6 lessons that we've learned in evaluating Gen AI. So first of all, a little bit about the company with the funny name. What's going on with that? We're a HR tech company, and we make software as a service solution applications for large clients. We define large clients as people with typically over 5,000 employees, and you can see some of our logos up there on the screen. But ultimately, we make hiring software. So these larger companies have unique challenges when it comes to hiring, and we make software using AI to help solve those challenges. So let me give you a couple of concrete examples. I got a bit enthusiastic making the slides, maybe 100,000 is quite a lot. But let's consider situation 1 where we have a company, they might post 20 job roles. And have I put 20? I've put 200, there we go. 200 job roles and lots of candidates apply, maybe it's 10,000, something like that. How do you process all of these candidates? How do you do that fairly? Ultimately, we're a skill science company, so that's how we do things. We just use AI to drive that skill science at scale. So we might call this situation a volume hire. If this is for early careers, you might call it an early careers volume hire. And then consider this very different, but also very important situation, which is where maybe you're headhunting this time as a company. There's one very senior position. You've found 5 fantastic candidates. They're all similarly qualified, similar levels of experience. How do you choose between them? So that is the question. How do we do this? I have 3 things on the screen that I'm just going to talk about. The first one is comprehensive psychometric testing. So we're lucky enough to have some of the best psychometricians, and that is a word, I learned that recently. We also use AI-powered interview intelligence. These are the features that I work on, so I'm going to focus primarily on those features in this talk. And then the final one here is just to point out that everything that we do is underpinned by occupational psychology best practice. That's just our domain experts. So anyone who works with AI, you probably have some domain experts. These are the ones that we use. So if you hear me talk about OP or OxPsych or anything, they're our domain experts. So yeah. Okay, before we go any further, I really do just want to use a brief story to motivate the lessons in this talk. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot of people in the room who can probably relate to many of the things in the story. So I want to take everyone back to August last year, August 2024, when I joined Spotted Zebra as the AI lead, and I was brought on to build out the team, build our AI infrastructure, and start making some AI-first, AI-native products. And the first project that I had was one called Skills Evaluation, and I'm very happy to say that this is now a product that we do offer and is in production. And the idea here is that our customers, they have many users, right? So they might have a hiring manager, they're hiring for a position, they might have 5 interviews a day, maybe that's 10 a day, something like that, it's a busy day. Lots and lots of candidates, lots of cognitive load. What our software does is you have a bot that joins your call, so whether that's in person, we might have the laptop beside you, or we might do that online with Teams or some other conferencing software, and that bot will transcribe the call and then pass that transcript to our AI models where we post-process that and try and get some nice rich insights. So what we might do in this case is try and extract all of the evidence we can find in that transcript for evidence of soft and technical skills, maybe values if they align with the company values. And really what that helps to do is reduce that cognitive load of the user, but helps them make their decision as a human. So really is about driving skill science at scale using AI to help humans make decisions that they are best placed to make. So the initial testing process for this was very slow, actually. And I think you might find this with a lot of greenfield projects. So it's very much a researchy project at this time, no hard deadlines, and the pace was acceptable. It was acceptable. So I would make some changes, purely prompt-based system at this time, very simple. I'd make some changes to the prompt. I'd pass that over to OP. I'd get their feedback. I'd make some more changes, nice little feedback loop. And like I said, this was absolutely fine until it wasn't. Because what happened was we started talks with a prospective client who became very interested in this piece of software. And we suddenly moved from having informal, infrequent feedback to very formal and very regular feedback, sometimes multiple times a day, and that's a lot of feedback to try and incorporate. So hopefully this story motivates the lessons that we've learned, moving at pace. We like to say internally we had a year's worth of development in a few months, so definitely learned a lot of things. Starting with lesson 1, I've put codify human judgment. So what do I mean by that? Well, actually, human in the loop was a buzzword at least two or 3 years ago, but it's still really important. You should definitely have, if you're deploying Gen AI systems, you need humans in the loop somewhere. It's just where do you want to place that effort? So previously, we would have myself making some changes to prompts. I'd go to OP, get feedback, and we'd run that cycle. And that's a lot of effort. I'd wait for them to respond. They'd wait for me to respond. So it's quite slow. So what we did here was we front-loaded the domain expert's effort at the start of the project, and we created some golden examples. A golden example is just a document where you pass an input into a model, and then the human actually creates what the output should be. And in that way, what you've done is you've defined exactly what you think the perfect output is. And you've run this multiple times with multiple different inputs. This is your gold standard set. This is your set of golden evaluations. So to drive that home with our example here, for skills evaluation, if you have some interview transcripts as your input, your output is going to be something like a JSON file that's just got all of the evidence, maybe neatly organized by skill, etc. Okay, so your pipeline looks something like this, where you have your interview transcript comes in, we extract some evidence using our model, and then we can compare that evidence to the golden examples. And what that allows us to do is actually get some really precise metrics. So we're moving away from this idea of prompt engineering being based on gut feel or feeling like a bit of an art form to now being quantifiable experiments. So some of the metrics that you could have could be coverage, how many pieces of evidence did we capture? You might call that accuracy. Precision, recall, F1, all these sorts of metrics we're already familiar with, we can start using. And we actually went really, really deep on this, and I could probably have done a whole talk just on golden examples. If you take anything away from this talk, I hope it's golden examples. So we went really, really deep. So we stratified our golden example set. We looked at interview transcripts from different role levels, so junior roles, senior roles. We looked at a broad spectrum of industries, and so on. So we could actually tell how well our prompts were performing for junior roles versus seniors. So maybe for junior roles, we're not capturing the evidence that people have of their skills from university because the prompts only look for things from a workplace. Maybe they've not worked for a company before. We can go in and we can get really, really deep. So I'm just going to summarize it in a few key benefits, but I think you can probably see there's a lot of things that you can do here. So what I've put in terms of the benefits are autonomous development. It allows you to move much faster because you're not waiting for that feedback loop. Very fine-grained feedback, like I was just talking about on the left-hand side, and also rapid model evaluation. So if you could imagine you've got your system set up, keep your prompts the same this time, but now you change the model. Now you're evaluating how good that model is. And we learned a lot of lessons here because when GPT-5 came out, we actually managed to test that on day one, whereas before maybe companies might have naively switched to that model because it's new, it's better, maybe we may have fallen victim to that. But actually, every new model, even in the same model family, has so many quirks. And because of the fine-grained feedback, we knew exactly what the quirks of GPT-5 were and could prompt tune, which is another new buzzword for people. So yeah, golden examples, very, very useful. I'm going to try and speed through the next ones because I want to spend quite a bit of time on that one. Lesson 2 was to version our prompts. Hopefully, I've convinced you that prompts can be viewed now as experiments. And in line with that thinking, I have a few bullets. The first one here is to use a structured file system. Please don't hard code your prompts. It makes things so much more difficult. I see that in a lot of places. If you just take them out into a file, it makes the whole rest of this process so much easier because you can start to version them properly. We actually use semantic versioning. So you could use something like we've got where we have a major, minor, and patch. We define what a major change is to a prompt, what a minor change is, etc. Makes it very nice and easy. Here's actually an example of an old prompt that we used. And on here, you can see that I've really tried to encapsulate everything that I need to run this experiment. Again, if anyone here has a scientific background, you know that we should really only change one variable at a time. So on here, I've got things like the provider that we used. So some people might be using Mistral, Anthropic, OpenAI. We actually use a mixture. You put all of your parameters in there. Your system prompt, yes, you should be versioning your system prompt. User prompt, we actually use a Mustache templating engine, if anyone's familiar with that, just get a bit more control over our parameters. So we created this prompt format because we couldn't find anything that we liked. But of course, you can create anything that works for you, some kind of format. is very nice. And it's just a YAML file, so it's really easy to parse. Speaking of, a model gateway. A model gateway is a really nice concept. It's essentially a function. You could write this in Python or TypeScript or something. But we found that actually when you don't put special thought into how you run your prompts, people might, or engineers across the business, might start re-implementing that logic. So you actually have lots of different little Python calls or TypeScript calls just running these API calls, which is fine. But actually, if you bring that into one place, into a single function, like we've done, we've just put that in our commons library. Now everyone can use that. And we have something in there that parses YAML files, packaged up our API calls nicely. We get all of our latency metrics, cost metrics, anything else that you'd like in there, retry logic, and so on. So actually doing that all in one place allows you to just front load that effort again and not duplicate. Keeping a change log, very useful. It's a small thing, but you can see what the difference was between your prompt versions. Now that you're running experiments, you can actually put some nice numbers in there, so you can actually see how they improve over time. And also using a config file. So on our prod server, we have all of our prompts. You don't need all your prompts versions, but you could have like the last 5 or something like that. So it's super easy for you to go in, oh no, there's been a problem on prod, we need to quickly roll back. Excuse me. You need to quickly roll back. You can just update that file, the config file, and roll back. Preferably if you do that way, you don't have to restart the prod server. That's even better. That's the way that we've done it. Okay, going to speed up a little bit more now. LLM as a judge. This is a really nice one. So hopefully I've convinced everyone there's a lot of benefit with golden examples. Small caveat. You can't use them for absolutely everything, and I can explain when you can and when you can't. So golden examples work really well for closed tasks. So that's a task where you have an input and there's a correct answer as your output. So for information extraction tasks, classification tasks, these work really well. You can imagine our example of skills evaluation. I have a transcript. Here's the evidence. This is what I want you to pull out. That's a fixed answer, right? Not everything is like that, and we actually have another feature called Interview Guide, which helps you make interview questions, and they're quite nice. They're context-aware, they pull from the job description, all that kind of stuff. But there's no one correct interview question. You could probably write thousands that are good. So what do you do instead? Well, actually, you can define some golden criteria, which is your success metric. So what defines a good question in this case? So with that in mind, I'll run you through the pipeline, what this might look like instead. So you have your model outputs. Our model generates an interview question. We then have an LLM that has our criteria in it, preferably a different LLM from a different model family. There's things like self-bias that we can get into. And then what happens there is you get a really nice information-rich list of all of the things that are good about your outputs and all things that are bad. And in that way, you can go and improve your prompts again. The key difference here, and the reason I've got MLOps on the screen, is because with golden examples, a human has to create those ahead of time. So really you're doing that at development time, you're testing your system and you're putting it into prod. With LLM as a judge, you don't need a human. You can evaluate it at inference time. As soon as that question comes out, you can evaluate it automatically. So now you can actually have essentially an MLOps capability as well. So it's nice you get that for development and you get that for production. It's a nice little bonus. A couple quick points on here. If anyone wants to go away and create these golden examples, a lot easier to create. If I know what the answer is, I just need to go in and write it in a file, but it can be really time-consuming. You imagine going through multiple hour-long transcripts and pulling out evidence. That's very time-consuming. Golden criteria, so much faster. It's literally just a list of rules, but trying to get down out of your head what a definition of good is onto paper or onto a screen, that's hard, and getting everyone to agree is hard, so prepare for many, 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 many workshops. Yeah, I'll just flash the benefits, but hopefully they're self-evident. It's real-time quality assessment and also this MLOps capability. How are we doing for time, Matt?
Couple of minutes.
Couple minutes. Okay, let me really speed up then. Lesson 4, turn failures into tests. We have an adversarial testing bank. Also really recommend this. Essentially, it's a collection of all of your most difficult, challenging inputs for your models. We have one of these for all of our different products that we have in production. I'll give you some examples. So we have edge cases that we test for routinely. Remember, at scale, it's no longer an edge case. It becomes the norm. So prompt injection attacks, empty inputs. We've had people on prod upload password-protected PDFs and wonder why their outputs aren't coming through nicely. So on that point, every time we find an error on prod, we then put that error, or the cause of that error, we put that into our testing bank. We make sure that we never have that error again. And this is a quote that we like to throw around internally. We used to absolutely dread seeing errors, of course, but now they happen much less frequently. So when they do occur, we get a little bit excited because now we can put something in our test bank. Okay, let's get through this one. OpenAI, logging API calls properly. Not the sexiest topic, but if you don't do the work now, you will hate your past self. Ask me how I know. When you create your logs, you don't need them until you do. You can't predict when you're going to need them. And when you need them quickly. So make sure that they have everything in that you need. Metadata, absolutely critical. If you use something like Langsmith, I assume people may have used Langsmith before, see some nods. You do get things like date time, model version, your usage metrics, etc. You won't get things like your prompt version, because now you're versioning the prompts. You can put that in as a custom field. If you're running chains of prompts, if you want to evaluate the performance of those, you really want to be able to tie those together, some kind of correlation ID, EUID, unbelievably helpful. Make them searchable. I don't think anyone's tried to search Langsmith logs. It's got a built-in search feature. It sucks. It's really poor. And we got bitten by that. So we actually moved everything over to S3. So we can query everything really nicely now. Also nice for auditing and compliance. And building your own fine-tuning data set down the line, which is quite nice. Okay, last slide, I promise. I just want to finish off by saying that evaluation is your superpower. I didn't think I truly appreciated how many benefits there were until we went through this entire process, and we're definitely more resilient and robust as a company because of it. Obvious benefits, development is so much faster. You can just go, you don't need to keep waiting for feedback. The product quality is so much better than it was before. Client communication, I think everyone's had that question where you get asked by a client, how do you know that your black box system is working well? How do you know what's going on inside? How can you say it's fair? Having all of your information in one place, all of your tests, is so helpful. We actually have a Python script that when we commit to main and we merge, that actually runs our evaluation script and just uploads that to Google Docs. So we don't even have to think about it. Once you set it up, honestly, it is so freeing. And the final piece is on compliance. So we're actually the first company in the interview intelligence category to get ISO 42001. And I don't think we would have gotten that without all of our evaluation metrics. Final point, EU AI Act is coming. So if anyone's using AI systems in production, you really should be thinking about this now. It's until 2026 till it becomes fully into force. So evaluation is absolutely going to help you with that. Cool. Hopefully I didn't run over too much.